you. Okay, I think we're just going to start here. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I am a senior software developer here at Achievers. And aside from writing code every day, I also am the admin of Achievers Tech, which we host these type of events to try to give back to the community. Our kind of cadence is every other month right now, so we're going to have another talk in March. Please come back. Thank you. And yes, so if you don't know anything about Achievers, we are a SaaS company. We have an online platform that help raise employee engagement. And essentially that means we allow companies to have their employee recognize each other within their internal space. And those recognitions sometimes are attached with points. Then those employees can use those points in turn to come back to our platform and use our catalogs to buy fun things like Apple's computers, reloadable Visa, and yeah, and feel really great about the things they do every day. We have grown a lot over the last couple of years. So just to give you a sense where we are coming from, in 2012, when I joined the company 4 years ago, we had 315,000 users in the platform. Today, we had 2.4 million. In order to actually support that large customer base growth, we actually have to do a lot of process changes, a lot of infrastructure changes to support this growth and still have high availability, which is really, really important to us because we are a B2B company and our customer base are around the world. We are in over 100 countries and we are international. So a non-business hour for us, it's not the same for everyone else, and we have to keep that tight. And the people on the panel today are the amazing people who actually help these changes along the way. And they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. And I'm going to kick up there with Kailyn.
Hello. My name's Kailyn Proctor. I am the software architect here at Achievers. I've been here about 6 years, so I am the most tenured person on this panel, though the youngest at heart. And because I've been here for so long, I've been through many different projects, big, small. A lot of them happen to be related to zero downtime deployments and making sure that we don't interrupt our customers when we're doing releases. In fact, as a fun fact, the first project I worked on at Achievers was our Java to PHP platform migration, which is about 4 years ago. And that was actually the topic of the very first Achievers Tech Talk by our CTO, Eris Zakanthinos. The video is online on our Achievers Tech YouTube. I highly suggest you watch it.
Hi, I'm Tange. I have been the release manager at Achievers for just shy of 3 years, and I've been with the company for just over 5 years. So I'm proud to say that I'm actually the first release manager that Achievers has had, and so with that came the responsibility of creating and implementing a release framework that would allow us to improve our deployments over time with a real focus on getting to zero downtime deployments and seamless migrations and deployments for our end users.
And my name is Russ. I am actually leading one of our feature teams right now. I started here just over 3 years ago. And when I started, I was part of what we called support or release team. And I led a lot of our deployments to production, our code pushes, and that's me.
Hi, my name is Steve Griffin. I'm the principal IT engineer here at Achievers. I design, maintain our production platform. I have over 12 years working in the SaaS world and 10 years building cloud environments and infrastructure.
Cool, thank you. So what we're going to be talking about today, a lot have to do with how we got here today. So we're going to set the stage with a little bit of backstory again. Back to 2012 when I joined, and back then, taking the site down is mandatory. We have to. And a lot of the deployments are done after hours. And a lot of time, the next day morning, someone is coming downstairs to yell at us. And we've grown a lot since then. So now, no one is coming to yell at us anymore. And deployments are done at 3 p.m. And no user actually have any interruption because of what we do. We don't have to schedule downtime anymore. And a lot of the companies still actually don't do that today. And a prime example that I found was Presto, the company that actually do the Go Transit ticket purchasing. They have a scheduled site down this month for 4 days, which is Yeah, they schedule a sign-off on January 15 to 18, and people can actually purchase ticket and online anymore, which is a little ridiculous. We actually had 99.98% uptime over the last 2 years, and Griff is really, really proud of that. So the message here is you're probably not going to get it right the first time. We didn't get it right the first time around. There's a lot of learning, a lot of growing in the process, and hopefully by sharing our story, you have some nice takeaway to try with your team when you go home today. And we're going to start with our first question, which is, what is Achiever's deployment cycle right now, and how does your role fit into it? We're going to start our cycle with development, where the code actually get produced.
Thank you. So Achievers is an agile company. We work in sprints, but I myself am the part of the architecture team, and we kind of work on our own things, usually what's the biggest fire at the time. But whenever it comes to new feature development, we get in early in the process when the team first starts designing the feature. So we help out going through the technical requirements, understanding how we're going to develop the feature, how we're going to design the database, what it's going to store. But the most important thing that we do at that point in time is push the team to think about how the feature is going to scale, whether it be a year from now or for a client like CVS, which is a 200,000 person client in our program. Getting people to think about these things ahead of time really, really helps make sure we don't have problems later on, and either way. Sorry. The other thing that we do within the development cycle is come in to do our automated performance and security testing. So we take performance and security very seriously here. Obviously, we're a B2B company. We want our members to have the best experience, the fastest site. But also, we are, in fact, an ISO 27001 certified company, so security checks and balances are very important to us, and we will absolutely never go to production knowing that we're reducing the performance or security of the platform. But other than that, so apart from that's the job of the architecture team, the feature teams in development are working in 2-week sprints, and as they build features, complete their tasks, they're doing pull requests to our GitHub Enterprise that we use internally, and going through the code review process. Right now we have the pull request will kick off automation pipeline, which admittedly right now is a little basic. It just kind of runs unit tests. We're fleshing that out as we go. But once they do that, the code review is completed. We make whatever modifications are necessary, and everything's looking good. It goes to what we call our merge review meetings. And these are short but very formal meetings where we go through our checklist, which is what we call the definition of done. And that's making sure that we've gone through the correct processes. So making sure that, yes, the tests are passing. Yes, people have reviewed the code. It has test sign-off that it does actually work as it should. And that list that we've built up has been from all the solutions that we've identified that will solve the common problems that get to production. So by going through that checklist, we know we're not doing any of the stupid, boneheaded things that we've done in the past that have caused problems for things. And within these meetings, we have the developer who's worked on the feature, their team lead, tester, we have our release manager, Carrie, as well as everyone else, and a few other people.
And you get sent home if you get it wrong.
Yes, that's true. It's not often that things go bad enough that that things get sent back to the developer to make changes. But it does happen. Everyone makes mistakes. And then once it is good, once it is completed and everything's signed off, it gets merged into our release branch for the next major release, and then the developer cycle starts anew.
So I have 2 roles as the release manager. So the first one is to basically be a pain in the ass to all the developers at every step of the way. So I want to make sure that we have the controls and framework in place. So a lot of the stuff that Kailyn was talking about, it's making sure that everything from having the definition of the scope. So that sounds pretty basic, but understanding what it is that we're trying to deploy, what we're trying to release, getting that overview really early on allows us to plan accordingly with testing, with communication, documentation, all of that. We have development and QA milestones along the way. So some of the stuff that Kailyn's talking about, ensuring code reviews get done, security testing gets done. We have a set of milestones that we have to hit, which with every single deployment, partially to maintain our ISO, but also just as good practice. A couple of other things that we do are technical and client risk assessments. So the technical assessment is just to see, in conjunction with Kailyn's team, what we're about to put out, making sure that we are putting something out that is going to maintain our production stability or make it better. We don't ever want to accidentally blow something up. And then on the client side, understanding how our clients are going to receive certain things, how are we going to be impacting them. So we do both of those assessments. Kailyn already touched on the merge review meetings. And then there's two final things that I think are important. So one of them is we actually maintain deployment notes. And that sounds really basic and common, but one of the things that I found early on as a release manager here was how easily it becomes automated for people. So if you actually don't have a step and a checklist, you accidentally miss something, and the deployment can go very wrong very quick. And within those deployment notes, we actually also have a clear outline for a rollback strategy. And then finally, at the other end of the life cycle, so we've gotten things into production, we now have a post-implementation review for where something, in spite of all our best efforts, if something went wrong, that's fine, mistakes happen. But we do a post-implementation review to understand what went wrong, apply those lessons learned so we don't have that same mistake again. And then really quickly, the second part of my job is around release operations. So I'm actually the chair of the release committee at Achievers, and that's a cross-functional team that has every department in it that could be impacted by the release. So sales, account manager, support, and my job as chair is to make sure that I can package and provide them with the release and ensure that they have training, documentation, they know how to receive the release. One of the things that we learned early on was, for one reason or another, the deployments and releases here were something that development was doing to the business. And so trying to change that mentality that we're actually a SaaS company, and so we need the participation of everybody in the company every single time that we do a release. So those are basically my two functions.
So I'm going to talk quickly about the deployment lead and you could call it the release lead role. So it's basically the responsibility of the deployment lead to shepherd all of those pull request revisions that Kailyn mentioned earlier, from being merged into the mainline branch and into production. So a big part of this is actually branching, and for the last couple of years now, we've had a pretty solid branching strategy. We have a mainline branch. We do pull requests from feature branches, and once all these features end up in our mainline branch, at the moment we push weekly to production, but we could push that branch anytime. It's always stable. So we decided to cut a release branch, and we'll take that release branch and deploy it to a staging environment. So our staging environment here is the closest replica to production that we can get right now. I'm sure Griff would argue that it could get better. But this allows us to do a lot of security and performance testing that Kailyn mentioned earlier on an environment that is very close to our production environment. We do a lot of automated GUI tests there. We use Selenium for that, and we do a lot of regression testing. We'll also use tools like Splunk and some internal reporting tools to make sure that we're not introducing any new errors on that staging environment, and we want to be sure that we don't actually push those to production. So once we're happy with that and we've signed off on it, we decide to deploy it to production. We have an automated deploy script that takes care of things like database alters and changes, versioning our clients, and other tasks that would come with a build. So when we choose to execute that, right now we do it during the day, and we'll have a team of people. So myself or the deployment lead, someone from Griff's team, the developers that actually own the features will be there too. They'll be on call so that they understand that they're taking their feature and putting it into production, and they're going to own that once it ends up in production.
So for IT, we get involved pretty much at the beginning for the feature release. We will get involved in terms of what they're developing, what's new, what they're updating, how does it affect our infrastructure, anything changing that requires a change to how we interact with a message queue or how we interact with Apache or make an align change. Stuff like that we'll get involved in, just to be sure we know what we have to change in our tests and our staging environment so they can actually do the proper regression testing. We also do monitor, we do deal with the alters. So when they write alters, we have to make sure that they fit our standard, because we use something called Tunson Replicator. If someone's not familiar with that, we don't use MySQL replication. It's a Java-based replicator. It allows you to replicate between different databases, the same type of database like MySQL or Postgres or whatever. That's how we connect our massive replication scale, which I'll talk about later. The alters have to be a certain size due to Java-based. Java heap has a certain size allocated to it. If the transactions are too big, we will fail. And there's a story behind that one too, which is kind of hilarious. And then the big part of what IT will do is we will be part of the, after deployment, our monitoring. We monitor everything. If it's not monitored, we will find out and we'll monitor it. And if they deploy a set of code that spins CPU on our backends or our web servers, we will know about it within 30 to 60 seconds. And by that time, I will have an email out saying there's a problem. And that's basically what IT does for that part of the deployment process.
Thank you. So now that you know a little bit, or maybe a lot of it, about what we do every day, let's go back in time a little bit again and talk about how we got here and what a major story have happened in the past that led us to what we do today. And I know Kailyn have a nice story for this.
Well, nice is relative to who you were at the time.
Yes, true.
So as I mentioned, I've been here a while, so I would like to describe the story of the first release I was ever a part of. We, at that point in time, we had decided to rebuild our entire catalog. And as Michelle had mentioned earlier, catalog is probably the #1 or #2 feature of our application. And if that's not working, it's bad, we're losing money, the experience is not good. So we decided in the development, we rebuilt the catalog, completely revamped the front end, the back end, configuration, everything. And so night comes of the deployment. We start at 8 p.m., take the systems down. They sent me home at 2 a.m. so I would be fresh the next day in case other problems came up. And of course, they did. One of the major things that happened was that none of our clients really knew that we were going to make this change. We completely redid the design of the catalog. They didn't really understand. No one had really explained to them what was going on. So we got a lot of pushback from that. But on the other hand, we learned from the experience, and that release became the catalyst for us when we're doing our migration from a Java to PHP platform to ensure that we had a way to run multiple versions of our code in production at the same time. And this has helped us immensely with the concept of zero-down deployments and not disrupting our customers, not only because we were able to gradually migrate our clients to the new version as they're ready. We always, as Achievers, go ahead right away, so we're always dogfooding the latest version of our code. But it also has really helped out with being able to do an easy rollback. So if something does go wrong, we can just roll back to the previous version, lickety-split.
Then I think that go right into the story that Carrie's going to talk about, which is when we actually convert the entire platform over from Java to PHP. There's a lot of legendary story that came out from there.
There's a couple of things actually. So one of the things that came out of Kailyn's story is the idea of giving the client notice. So I guess in this case, I was given 2 days notice to tell the client, so that's better. So that's good. And then for people that are from Achievers or former Achievers, you guys will have heard the legend of the cube. So I'm going to kind of walk through that because I think we have we had a lot of learning lessons from it. So when you're asking, how it's changed since I started, well, my role didn't even exist. And by the sounds of it, there weren't any real controls or process in place whatsoever. And I think that the real tipping point for Achievers came when, like Michelle mentioned, we needed to migrate our platform from Java to PHP, which meant that we had to migrate over 300 programs from our old platform to our new one, and at the same time decided to revamp a lot of the main features, high visibility features, so a huge impact on user experience as well. So you have these two things coming together, and at the time I happened to be on the client support team. I actually don't remember, a developer came up to me and was like, by the way, this is happening. The clients that I had in my portfolio that I was helping to support, and I went to the VP of Client Success and I was like, do you understand what's about to happen? Because everyone seemed a little too good with it. And so I guess I volunteered myself to sort of organize this and lead this migration. And what it involved was 6 of us being locked in a meeting room that's known as the Cube. And so it basically became a war room for 6 months. So we had 3 developers, Kailyn included. We actually didn't have any testers in the organization at the time, so we literally hired in kids off the street, and they were testers. So it was really bad all around. And so out of that, it was the way that the process would work is that we actually, almost as bad as Presto, we would notify the client, do 1 program a day, and say your program's going down at 9 a.m. tomorrow, or tomorrow, best case scenario, you'll see at 9 a.m. the next day. So a full 24 hours without access to the program, without us making any revenue. During that time, the developer would actually complete the migration from old to new platform. Then another developer would actually try to get the design and front end up and running. Then we'd have our fake testers hopefully testing everything that they could to make sure that everything is working. Inevitably, they find bugs and issues, and so we have developers like Kailyn fixing things on the fly, knowing we have a 24-hour clock. So in some cases, we made it, and in other cases, programs were down for 2 days. I think, from what I remember, was the worst case. So it was a complete, it was painful internally. It was so painful externally. And so out of that, there were a lot of things that we learned, obviously, as a business. And one of the key takeaways, I believe, was the business started to really appreciate that, hey, you need to have somebody that is going to package these things. You need to have someone that is going to organize them, understand the importance of the controls, what the client needs to know and understand. And so the discussions around having a release manager, that's how they started to come to fruition. The other, what Kailyn already touched on, one of the experiences we got out of that was ever since we've moved to our PHP platform, we now have versioning. So that allows us to do any work that we need to do without actually disrupting our clients, in some cases for several days. The 2 other quick things that we learned from that, and sort of we still see in our process today, is the concept of tiering our clients. So for one reason or another, we collectively thought it was a great idea to put our biggest, best client on the new platform first. Try all of this stuff out in our war room and hope for the best, and it did not go well, and they were very upset with us for a very long time. They still bring it up. And so one of the things that we've learned from that is the concept of you eat your own dog food. So now we upgrade internally first. We make sure that it works for us. Then we test out a few small clients, simple clients, and work our way up. So by the time we get to our top 20, the ones that are paying our salaries, we make sure everything is working really well. And from that, obviously, we really needed to figure out migrating 300 programs over 6 months and actually having 1 to 2 days of downtime for each of those is ludicrous, and you can't do that again. And so from there, thankfully, where we are today is that we can actually upgrade all of our clients instantaneously. There's 0 downtime. It's seamless for the user. So that's sort of the evolution for my role.
Cool. So one of the big things that changed for me as a developer over the last 2 years, we actually changed our branching strategy. It changed the way I do work personally as well. And Ross just going to tell us a bit about that.
I sure am. So I think the way that we do branching using pull requests now, just thinking, it hasn't been that long, and we kind of take it for granted. I can remember when I first started, we would have very long-running releases, so we could be developing code for months at a time, and by the end of that, we'd want to have there's one branch that we can somehow merge into our mainline and get it out. Well, we would end up with 6 or 7 different branches from different teams with different features. Sometimes they were called feature integration branches. Sometimes people just gave you a branch and said, here's my shit. So we would take 1 or 2 developers, we'd task them with taking all these branches, cutting the master branch or the mainline branch, and getting all this stuff into a single branch that we could actually deploy comfortably. So for me, that is certainly the biggest thing. We've always done weekly deployments. In the past, they've always been what we call hot fixes, so bug fixes. And when I first started here, and for quite a while after that, we would cut a branch from our main line, we would have a team of developers working in that branch. They would be committing changes, bug fixes, whatever, and test would actually be testing in that branch. We would have a specific day that we had to get that out, and we had client commitments. We would tell clients that your bug fix is going to be out this day, and people would be hounding you, and it would turn into a mess because we would be down to the last day. We'd be scrambling to fix bugs. We had no confidence in the branch, so we actually ended up, we ended up deploying a branch at midnight or 11 p.m. It was very low confidence. We knew there probably would be errors, and we just dealt with the consequences after that. So I'm happy to say that it's a lot more comfortable working with pull requests and more frequent commits. So.
I've been working in this space for a very long time. Multiple startups, big companies acquisition. And when I got here, I've seen a lot of things. When I started, there was no redundancy. Nothing. Nothing was redundant. Everything was a few servers here, a few servers there. We connected to this one server via IP address. It was just a very bad. I understand why it was there. But, that's growth. It's growth. I understood it. So one of the things I decided to do was as soon as I got here, I tried to fix all the single points of failure I could find within our current data center. We only had one. Created redundant proxies. One of the things that I think the biggest change we made to help with our deployments to be zero downtime was putting a proxy in between our web servers, and our backend servers database. It really changed a lot of things because we could route everything through there, and the ability you could route anything. Message queues, connections to different DBs, Sphinx, for example, our catalog, that was a life changer. That really made a big difference in how we did things. And go back to just zero downtime. Because when I started, we deployed, and it's like, oh, there goes the platform. I mentioned the single points of failure, and an example of when I started, IT was not involved in anything. We didn't get involved until after the deployment happened and it broke. So one of the examples I had was my first release. It was a big release. I'm super excited. And when I started, they implemented this new technology called Tungsten. I'd never heard of it. I knew nothing about MySQL. I was more of a Linux guy, email dude. That's all I knew how things work. So, when we deployed, everything just went offline. And I had to take a crash course on how Tungsten actually worked. And it really came I realized that we don't understand the technology that we're deploying to. And I think that's where I was like, all right, when we need to get involved in the earlier process now, as they develop and educate everyone, get the process going, how to make sure that this does not happen again. Because I was here till 6 in the morning, and I was the only one that does this technically now. So that's it.
And just out from that, can you actually tell us a disaster scenario that you run into, and how does everything you do to help fix it?
Yeah, we have a DR site. We built it in November 2014. It's a full replica of our primary data center. It has everything that we need to run our platform out of if we need it. We do real-time replication under 500 milliseconds on average, which is pretty good. So we can fail over anytime we want. One of the things, it came in great hand in August. Bav. So my Bav is my network engineer, and we have two sides to our network. We have an A and a B side. Standard. You could take down the B side, everything worked through the A. So when we took down the B side for maintenance and rebooted it, it never came back. So we had to, the only way to fix it, according to Cisco, was take down the A side. I was like, that's not an option. So you know what, we'll just fail over. And we could fail over within 15 to 20 seconds. And all the user really sees is a slow browser, because the way HA Proxy can queue requests for us. And it actually works really well. With DNS, short TTLs, we were able to fail over pretty quickly and route anything from the front door of our data center primary into our DR site without worrying about browsers that cache DNS for a longer period of time. That's it.
That's a big example. So I'm just going to, Ross has talked to you a little bit about the smaller examples. For instance, if we do a deployment and something didn't go well, we have a big rollback plan. And can you tell us a bit about that?
So one of the examples I'll talk about here is Kailyn mentioned earlier we have a catalog. So our users, it's a critical part of our platform because it's kind of how we make money. So users take their points, they redeem for merchandise or whatever they want, and then we get paid. So that's how it works. So we've done a couple of deployments, we've broken a couple of things. A couple of years ago, we deployed, obviously it was 11 p.m., midnight. I think it was just me and one other person around. We didn't used to have teams of people actually on call. So we deployed this code. Our catalog went down almost immediately. We knew that the catalog was down. We normally jump on and do a quick sanity check. And we have the monitoring tools that tell us, hey, something's blowing up. So, sorry, I'm spinning here. At the time, we took some time to just kind of dig into the production servers, do a bit of an investigation. We couldn't work out what the issue was, and we kind of came to the conclusion that, all right, we need to do something here because we can't keep going ahead with the catalog down. It's been too long. We're going to have to take this offline. So Kailyn mentioned earlier that we have the ability to version our clients. So in this case, we were able to actually go into our database servers, switch all of our clients to the previous revision, which was the previous week's deploy or the previous couple of days deploy. We knew that that revision was stable because clients had been running on it for the previous week. So we went in there, we took the time, we updated our clients to that revision, and all was good again. So out of that, we actually we took a few things from that. We automated our rollback. So not that we want to do it often, but we wanted the tool there so we can hit a command and seconds we roll back instead of taking the time to actually do it manually. We also worked with Carrie and the release management team to come up with some processes so that depending on the issue and the severity of it, so whether it was critical functionality or whether it was some major functionality that we could live with being broken for a short period of time, we came up with some time limits and limitations on how long we could be down in those areas of the platform. So how long could we investigate those, possibly push a fix before we actually need to roll back. So there were some good things that came out of those. And we, thankfully it doesn't happen too often. We've used these processes a couple of times and only when we have really needed to. So.
Yeah. And I'm personally super thankful that the process was actually put in place to limit the time we will have to fix certain problem at night, because sometimes you run into a couple of small things and you end up being here till like 5 o'clock in the morning when you really could be looking at it tomorrow after you have some sleep and have fresh eye on it, and it was super, super helpful. So the last question is just, as achiever, we are actually overachievers all the time. Can you just talk a little bit about what we're improving upon, what's coming next in a short 30 seconds?
Sure. So as I talked about before, we have a pipeline, but it is small. We need to make it faster. We need to make it have better feedback so we instantly know when something's wrong, because if there's anything wrong in our build, it needs to be fixed ASAP. And we need to increase the coverage. So more tests, more different things to validate beforehand, just to make sure as we build that out, we have more and more confidence that when that pipeline gives us the green light, that we can say that's good enough, we know it's going to work, and we can ship it to production right away.
So there's two things that I'm currently working on. So one of them is decoupling the concept of a deployment from a release. You may have noticed even in the panel we use those two words synonymously. Got it. And so separating those things out so that the developers can decide when something is ready to be deployed. They can decide what they're deploying, how often they're deploying, and the rest of the business doesn't have a mild heart attack about what we're about to do to them. And the rest of the business can package it as they see fit, decide when certain clients get certain features, take their time with marketing, updating websites, getting documentation together, and all of that. And that ties in, if we are, as Kailyn mentioned, building out this pipeline, the idea is to get to continuous pick your favorite favorite word, integration, delivery. And in order for us to get to that as well, a lot of the framework that we have in place today, while it's essential and it serves a purpose, it's all very manual. So I know the developers, like every time I come at them, I know that they're running away from me. So getting that stuff automated so that they can just run through everything on their own and present a guaranteed result like Kailyn was mentioning, and have that verification process that's quick and painless, and making sure that the framework and the process that we need to have in place doesn't actually become a bottleneck that hinders our development cycle.
So I'm going to jump on the automation bandwagon too, because we want to automate as much as possible. And just to Kailyn's point, our current pipeline or continuous integration systems. So one thing that we're looking to do in the near future is actually automate the process of deploying to production. So once our build is successful, it will go out without a team of developers and test engineers having to manually execute that deployment script and push the code to production. We're also looking at some new tools, so things like Sentry for exception tracking. We use some internal error reporting right now, so things like Sentry would be a step up, and it would give us the ability to put that monitoring in developers' hands and let them lead their features or changes all the way to production and then beyond that. So.
Some of the things IT is working on, it's actually kind of cool stuff. We have we're a website, so we host lots of images, and all our static content's in one FS directory, and currently that sits north of 10 million files currently and grows about 100K a month. It's not scalable. It doesn't work for an active-active scenario if we ever wanted to get there. So we're looking at object storage, Ceph particularly. Anyone knows Ceph? Come talk to me, because I would love to know how it works sometimes, because it's a little black magic. We're also looking at upgrading our operating system. We're looking at moving from CentOS 6. We stay usually on the latest stable version of CentOS 6. We're going to CentOS 7 due to performance improvements with the newest generation hardware that comes out, and some of the security stuff that I think is pretty cool, and a sysadmin dream with some of the commands that you can actually do out of it. And automating, man. Automation is the key to everything. We have 250 nodes. 70% of those are virtualized, 30% are physical, and I'm just me and one other person, and we automate everything. If it can't be automated, we figure it out. And we use Chef, and we're going to scale Chef pretty big in the next year. Yeah, that's it.
Eventually, we'll get replaced by robots if we automate everything. And right now, we'd like to open up for audience questions for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Just to keep in mind that we are broadcasting over internet, so there will be a mic going around, and just wait until your mic to speak. Thanks. Anyone? 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 Nothing?
Questions? Anybody?
Questions?
This is for Carrie Tange, the release manager at Achievers. I'm interested to know how difficult it was to change the opinion of the business to see the need and importance of release management at Achievers.
So it's actually pretty easy when you fuck up so bad. So if I think, if anything, the whole war room migration scenario, it was one of those things that I didn't actually have to convince anybody, like, you need me or somebody doing this job. It was clients screaming, account managers screaming, developers actually, I think some of them crying because they're stuck with me for 6 months. So it actually, I think it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know. And I think like the example that Kailyn gave as well around, we just changed the catalog and we didn't actually communicate or tell anybody. You're not going to, those things seem very logical in hindsight, but you're actually not really going to appreciate the necessity to have those sort of framework and process in place until something goes terribly wrong. And that goes for, I think, pretty much everything that we've said on the panel. The rollback strategy came out of someone staying up until 6 a.m. trying to fix something. The redundancy came out of production's down and we have no way to get it up. So I think that that's honestly how you learn and convince the business. So go back to your places, and if you want something, break something, and you got it.
You can use our video to convince them if you want. Anyone else? I can add something. And yeah, I have a question written down by one of our internal about our deployment bottleneck. we have automated deploy script, which is good enough already, but it still actually take a while to deploy codes, and there's sure to be ways to improve it. What is the biggest bottleneck we run into? And Kailyn or Ross?
So I think a deployment script, it's pretty lengthy. It could use some work. It's a giant shell script. It works for us right now, so we like it. But at some point, I don't think I mentioned this, but at some point, that's something we're definitely going to be working on optimizing to kind of allow us to do some automated deploys. I think right now, one of the things that takes the longest is we're always building our assets or our fingerprinting our static JavaScript files, CSS files. Every time we deploy, it doesn't matter what server, we're always going through this build, and you might be doing a change that is unrelated. We're always doing it, and we don't check files change, things like that. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the bigger bottlenecks. Kailyn, do you want to?
I agree.
That was it?
Fine, what Ross says is exactly it. The thing is, like, deploying to production is not particularly a problem. Like, yes, so our script takes about 30 minutes to run end-to-end, but it's end-to-end with zero human interaction. It will do everything right. If anything goes wrong, it stops, lets people know. But the biggest bottleneck, as Ross mentioned, it's in the test environments. If QA is getting, the test team is getting changes from 10 developers, that's 10 different branches that need to be deployed to 10 different environments. If each of those take half an hour, that's already hours of the day just waiting for that to complete. So if we can optimize it, if we can agree that we can skip step A if we're fixing a problem in step B that's completely unrelated, that will allow us to be able to do those deploy faster, get our checks done quicker, and be able to have more, to be able to do things quicker, get the cycle going faster.
And I guess another question that I already know the answer of. Anyone interested to know what's in our risk assessment checklist? Maybe? Carrie? Yeah, thanks.
So dealing with, because it's a B2B business, how do you deal with clients that want to be given notice before there are any updates that will affect their users?
So it's actually something that we struggle with a little bit right now. So what we've done is we actually have an environment that we give to our client success team. So those are our account managers. And in the best case scenario, when it comes to if we're going to have a major release with a lot of significant changes, new features, functionality, we'll make sure that we give them an actual server where that gets upgraded approximately a month in advance. And that has gotten better over time, because one of the things that I don't think necessarily came up, but our releases used to be finished, say we were going to deploy at midnight, they'd be finished at 11:59. So, we have to be release ready a lot sooner. So that's the thing that we've done with some of our clients. And I think as we move to continuous integration and deployment, we haven't actually figured that out yet. We are working with, and Stephen, maybe I'll let you talk about the sandbox environment, because I think that's where we're going to go as far as providing previews. But that's sort of the idea, right? And it's figuring out why a client wants to see something is also really important, and whether or not you have a contractual obligation to give them that preview, because we have some clients that want to know everything 3 months in advance, and we don't. In some cases, we actually don't know. And so getting to that level of figuring out, is it a huge thing that they're unrolling to their business? Well, we can work with them on that, give them mock-ups, give them documentation on how something's going to work, help train them well in advance. We can do all of those things. But for people that actually want to click and play, right now we give them about a month preview on one of our servers. And then do you want to just kind of talk about next steps with the sandbox?
Yeah, so basically with the sandbox, we never had one. We have multiple environments all over the place. Some environments I didn't know actually existed. And I decided we need to get rid of it all. So we built Sandbox. And Sandbox is literally an exact replica of production. And it has all the user data that it can need, all user access. And the best part about it is it will expire after a period of time. And that is exactly. So when we do these release features, we're able to provide that release for that client. He or she can go take a look over. Hey, that looks great. Perfect. Thank you. Excellent. Deploy. Great. You're gone. So we can, that's the whole point of the sandbox, is be able to have that one environment where everybody uses. So that's it.
We have a question back here.
So I guess this was a question for the principal IT engineer.
Smart ass.
You mentioned that Achievers is running both on physical and virtual hardware. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about what you think is the reliability of the two types and why you use one or the other or both.
Well, when I started, the virtual environment wasn't very good. So it was very weak. The storage under it was not very good. It was very unpredictable. Lots of bottlenecks with I/O, CPU. We just couldn't figure out what was going on. And I've always came from a physical environment, so we went physical because physical is easier to predict. You can predict when CPU is going to go. You know when memory is going to go. You know what your memory trend is going to be. As your traffic grows, the trending of what that, you can predict it better on physical than you could on virtual. Virtual has come a long way, and there are some things that we are virtualizing because I don't care about the CPU growth. I don't care about memory. I just don't care because I know I'm going to get out of it. And those little spikes, with virtualization, you have other factors in. If you have 200 nodes sitting on 2-3 data stores, you're going to run into problems if you don't have the storage under it, the SAN that can handle all that stuff. And we made a significant investment in our SAN over the last year, and we use NetApp. We just bought an 8040 in case anyone's interested. It's actually really good. And Cluster on Tap, we just migrated to, and it really is fantastic. There's a great performance improvement for virtualization. And it's gotten to a point where I can say I would virtualize some of our infrastructure now. Just basic stuff where I don't need to predict the trend. And that's it.
One over there.
So you mentioned you did a data center move, but I'm pretty sure the reason you did that was you mentioned you did a data center failover, and I'm pretty sure that was because you moved data centers. Now, I did that once for a much smaller company, and it was something like lean the server blades against the side of the building, hail a cab, throw them in like luggage, and bring it down to the new data center. What did your migration look like?
So we were hosting in Q9. I hate Q9. Sorry if anybody works there. I despise it. We were in shared service racks. When we built our DR site over a year ago in 2014, and in the middle of 2015, around April, May, we had to get out of Q9. It's too expensive. And Distillery District opened up a data center. Equinix did. It's called TR2. And as soon as that happened, we were like, we're going. And how we did it was we just failed over to our DR site automatically. We were down. Our primary data center in Toronto was down for 4 days. 4 days. But our program was still running. No issues. No problems. Everything was simple and easy. And then as soon as we brought up our new site, we turned on our replicators because our replicators are connected. They're interconnected in between all our databases. So we have 2 that run in our DR site, 3 that run in our primary site. And as soon as we powered everything on, started the connector, it knew the sequence number where it left off at, and it pulled down all the data from our DR site. Within 2 or 3 hours after power on, we were ready to go. And we flipped right over. No one knew. No one knew. It was perfect. It actually was one of our probably one of the best projects I've been on. I've been on multiple data center migrations, and that's probably one of the most easy transitions. Building it was another challenge. Thank you, Cisco. But that was, other than that, once we got through all those problems with Cisco, we were able to get everything up. It was great. Worked out really well. But we put the investment in, and that's the key. If you don't have the investment as a startup, it's hard. It's not easy to do.
All right, so if there's no more questions, going once, oh, there's someone online? Oh, going once, going twice. There's one there.
Thanks. Just a quick question. What do you use to handle your replication?
We use Tungsten Replicator. So Tungsten Replicator is a Java-based replicator. We use two parts of Tungsten. There is the Tungsten Enterprise, which is we pay for that. The reason why you pay for it, it's still open source, but we pay for the support, which in theory we really don't need anymore. But there's two independent Tungsten clusters that do not know about each other. And then the replicator is open source. And you can just use the replicator for your multiple databases. And what we do is we connect the replicator to our other database, and vice versa. We just run two at once, and they replicate as long as you based on host name. Everything is you have to have PTRs if you do use it. I've run into issues with that. Reverse DNS for some reason is big with them, but it's not MySQL. It acts like a MySQL replication, but it doesn't. It just puts everything in. It can do it does small transactions. It does 10 at a time, 100 at a time. You could scale it very easily, and yeah, that's what we use. It works really well. I highly recommend it.
Cool. Yes, so we're just gonna end with one last question for the panels, and just give our audience some key takeaway. If you were to do it all over again, what would you want to apply the most?
So we didn't talk too much about it in this panel, but one of the things that we did start doing a couple of years ago is code reviews. If developers out there, if you're reading the news, this sounds like something everyone should be doing, and it is absolutely true. The number of things that you catch early on in a code review, way before it gets to production, it's insane. So doing those so that we know what's going out, everyone. Based upon the experience, the lessons we've learned, we know what to look out for in terms of, is this going to be maintainable in 6 months? Is it going to scale in 6 months? Is it going to drop dead for some ridiculous reason? Getting all those things done ahead of time has massively solved the problems. And as what Ross said before, we no longer have 10 branches being merged together where no one but the developer who wrote the code has ever seen it before. It's a lot. We have more visibility in what's being built, why, and that we know it's being done right.
I have two things. So one of them would be, by the time that I came in with my role and tried to develop a framework, it went from the sort of Wild West to, from the development perspective, it felt like we were putting a lot of lock and controls in place. So if I could start over again and do something, it would be put the processes in place as you need them and as you go. So it won't, you don't want to ever hinder your development cycle, and you want to be able to scale quickly, particularly if you're agile and you're a small startup. But that would definitely be something I would recommend, because if you get too far into sort of Wild West, it's so extreme, right? You got to pull it back so hard, and it's something that it's really hard to get internal buy-in. So that would be my recommendation: is add light process as you go when it makes sense for your business, and have the foresight to recognize, be proactive about it. Don't wait for the disaster scenario where your clients are down for a day, or you have developers here till 4 a.m. Kind of take that step back and think, okay, what is the worst case scenario, and what should we be practically doing to mitigate that risk as much as possible up front. And then that just ties into the second thing, which is post-implementation reviews. They're very formal here, and we only ever did them with significant issues, but there's something that, in all of the stories that we all shared, there's those natural lessons learned that come out of it if you're directly involved. So I think, again, if I could do something over again, it would be sharing those lessons learned with the broader development team and test team, because there's no point in, I have to experience what it's like to deal with a client that's been down for a day, and until Kailyn actually experiences that, he's going to continue to make the same mistakes. So those, I think, are the two takeaways that I would highly recommend.
So I think for me, I have to agree with both of these guys, but I'll expand on that. So as Kailyn mentioned, doing valuable code reviews, and I think the way that we do them now with GitHub Enterprise pull requests, it not only gives you, a lot of people, full transparency, it puts more eyes on the code, but it starts better conversations about what we're doing. So instead of me walking up to Kailyn and saying, how should I do this? Should I do this? This way, I could do that 10 times a day just to do one pull request. But if I open a pull request and Kailyn's on that pull request, and he's looking at the code with another 5 people, we're having those conversations there. I'm not the only one learning, it's other people learning. And to Carrie's point, the post-implementation reviews, they have been formal, but they're always, we avoid blame, so it's about what went wrong and what we can learn from that. So these kinds of things that we've kind of been pushing for here have really, we have a certain culture here in our development team, but they've really helped to push that culture and shape it. So if you're kind of starting a development team, or you're in a development team where it doesn't have a great culture, they're good things to kind of get that ownership and that responsibility going within the teams. So that's it for me.
The process, getting involved early in the process, that's been huge for me and my team. Also, hiring a really good sysadmin helps too. And understanding the technology that we work with. I think that was a big thing. A lot of people, even I didn't understand how some of that stuff worked, and just taking a step back, understanding was a big thing to help get us to where we are. And it took a lot of headbutting to make that happen.
So one of the big things for me, I don't know if you want to care what I think, but just from actually planning this panel and listening to these great people talk about the things they achieve, what I realize is changes are always going to happen, and changes are easier if you actually get the people buy-in early. If you have 5 people or 40 people in your team, if you explain to them up front what's going to come, it's easier than you throwing the process on them. And that's one of my biggest learning, that changes are just going to happen, and if you plan well ahead of time, it makes things so much easier. I have a couple housekeeping items, and then you guys can go. And we have so hopefully you guys found us through our meetup page. We have a lot of members there, and we're gonna have another talk in March. Please come out. We are also starting a blog, so tech.achievers.com. One of our developers just put the first post up today about real-time blurring in iOS. We're gonna put more article on as time goes on, and this is the place where we're gonna actually have all the videos for Tech Talks. Particularly, this one will be probably up by the end of the week, hopefully. And so check this out. And we're hiring, so please check out this page if you're interested in working with great people like us. And lastly, this is the one-of way to actually reach us. Thank you very much for coming out today. Thank you.